I'd like to call Maya Fey to the stand.
And for what reason?
Has a spirit medium?
Objection!
You can't do that.
Or can you, Internet? Hello, Internet. This isn't game theory, so I may not be able to ruin your childhood, but I can promise I'll ruin your day. As a fan of all things theorist, I've been wanting to make a theory on Ace Attorney for a while now, and Matpat's retirement was the inspiration I needed. So, Ace Attorney. To all of you who may not be familiar with the series, you may just know that it's a legal drama video game, and you probably know that it's incredibly inaccurate. But the laws of the courtroom aren't the only laws that it breaks, for the laws of physics are constantly being broken by Ace Attorney's spirit mediums. The game features spirit mediums who can communicate with the dead, which kinda makes the whole criminal defense attorney thing a little bit easier. So if the laws of the courtroom aren't being realistic, are the spirit mediums realistic? Could they really be used in the legal system like they are in game? We need to know how realistic Ace Attorney's spirit mediums are. I know you know that the trope of a psychic detective working a police department isn't an original concept, but Ace Attorney's spirit mediums aren't psychics. They're spirit mediums, an individual held to be a channel of communication between the earthly world and a world of spirits. But just where are these spirit mediums drawing their inspirations? There seem to be two main sources of inspiration for Ace Attorney's spirit mediums, the first being Buddhism. Reunion and Turnabout, the second case of Ace Attorney Justice for All, takes place in Kurain Village, the hometown of the spirit medium Maya Fey, just a few hours away from where the games usually take place. Here we get a vital piece of information about their history, learning from Mia, being channeled by Maya, that the Kurain channeling technique derives from her ancestor, mystic Ami Fey. Now, Ami is almost an anagram of the Buddha Amitabha, which Maya explains herself, or rather Mia. So we know that the developers intended for Buddhism to play a role, which actually makes sense considering that Ace Attorney takes place in Japan. It takes place in Japan or California? When Ace Attorney came out in Japan, intended for a Japanese audience, the game took place in, well, Japan. But when it was localized for a Western release, the developers actually changed the setting to Los Angeles. But either way, the Buddhist influences make sense. According to the Pew Research Center, Japan had some 45 million Buddhists in 2010. And according to Pew, as much as 2% of California's population is Buddhist. Now, admittedly, that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. Compared to the other states, California has the second highest percentage of Buddhists, being second only to Hawaii, with a whopping 8% Buddhist population. And it's not only the real-life geography that checks out either. Maya Fey and her fellow spirit mediums come from Kurain Village, but the inhabitants of Kurain Village? Their ancestors are actually immigrants from Kurain. That's Kurain the country, not the village. They're named the same. Kurain is the setting of Ace Attorney's Spirit of Justice. Due to commentary from the developers at Capcom, we know that Kurain takes place somewhere around here. Bhutan in particular is a rather Buddhist country covered by this range, and has some spirit mediums of their own, the Dalams. But in terms of the spirit mediums themselves, I think we can get a clearer picture on their inspiration if we look at the second source of inspiration. Take a look at Maya Fey here. Notice anything familiar? Her Japanese clothes, her channeling abilities, the fact that she comes from Kurain Village? That's right, Maya Fey is none other than an itako spirit medium from Aomori, Japan. Need more proof? Okay, so the itako. They're a group of usually blind Japanese women who serve as spirit mediums. Historically, itako would practice a Japanese form of shamanism, or a religion pertaining to spirituality, and of course, spirits. As Japan grew into a more Buddhist and Shintoist country, the itako remained as a remnant of the shamanism of before. Today, the itako can be found at Mount Osor, the Aomori region of Japan, about 3 train rides or so north of Tokyo. After booking an appointment, the itako may, allegedly, contact the spirit, usually a loved one, through a series of prayers. According to multiple accounts, they may even assume the voice of the spirit. The mediums are not really tightly associated with Buddhism, but an association is there. For example, the temple at Mount Osor, where the mediums work, is believed to be a gathering place for souls before reincarnation in Buddhism. Despite this, the mediums aren't officially associated with the temple, They're more so tolerated or respected as a tourist attraction. In fact, during the Meiji period, a time of drastic modernization for Japan, the itako spirit medium's practices were actually criminalized under the law. Back to Ace Attorney, Kodain Village seems to match the geographical description of Mount Osor, at least if we believe Ace Attorney takes place in Japan. Both Kodain Village and Mount Osor can be reached via train and are located in mountainous regions by the coast, with Mount Osor being located on the northern peninsula in Japan. Kodain Village's all-female spirit mediums line up with the real-life itako as well, and the channeling of the voice fits both Ace Attorney and itako spirit mediums. Now, admittedly, Ace Attorney spirit mediums aren't blind like the itako usually are, but other than this, most of the main points match up between the two groups. So now we know what Ace Attorney spirit mediums are based on, but have these spirit mediums ever seen the courtroom like they do in-game? Remember, the question I'm trying to answer is if these spirit mediums being used in court are realistic or not. So with a clap and a half, let me explain. In-game, the DL6 incident is perhaps the most famous use of spirit mediums in the legal system. No spirit medium was directly called up to the witness stand in this case. Instead, the police went to Misty Faye, asking her to channel the murder victim, Gregory Edgeworth, who promptly told her who he thought the murderer was. But have we seen this kind of behavior in the spirit medium's inspirations? Well, yeah, kinda. The itako don't really see much use by the police or courtrooms. They exist mostly as a private entity, but the itako is only one of their inspirations. Before, I briefly mentioned the Bhutanese Daylams. These women are spirit mediums said to have gone to hell and back to deliver messages. According to witness accounts, they're often used to communicate with spirits to settle land and inheritance disputes. Even though this doesn't quite sound like the criminal cases we see in Ace Attorney, their duties are much more akin to that of a civil trial, which settles disputes between individuals. Don't worry though, there have indeed been spirit mediums used in a setting akin to a criminal trial. Like an actual criminal trial. The year is 1987. No. The year is 1897 in West Virginia. January 22nd. Elva's owner Hester Shue has been found dead in her home. The victim's husband, Erasmus Trout Shue, was ushered to the scene along with Dr. Knapp. After failing to resuscitate, Erasmus denied letting the doctor examine further. Erasmus also requested to place his wife's corpse in a dress with a high collar around the neck. In the time following the death, Erasmus showed no clear concern and showed no proper appreciation of the loss he had sustained. At the same time, the victim's mother had been experiencing something unusual. For 4 nights in a row, she'd saw apparitions of her daughter. She explained how it was her husband Erasmus who killed her for not preparing any meat for supper, and Erasmus had broken her neck. With the authorities informed, post-mortem examination was conducted, the very same examination that Erasmus had denied earlier. Indeed, it was clear that the victim's neck had been dislocated. With the fingers pointed at Erasmus, during the trial, the prosecution had the victim's mother testify as to her ghostly visions. Under cross-examination, the defense pushed the mother to admit the so-called visions were actually just dreams, but she never budged, saying, "Yes, sir, it was not a dream. I don't dream when I'm wide awake, to be sure. I know I saw her right there with me." Erasmus was convicted of first-degree murder by the end of that trial. A ghostly vision from the victim leading to the police investigating a suspect, leading to the suspect's arrest and sentencing? This sounds a lot like the DL6 incident, with Misty Faye channeling Gregory Edgeworth to determine who the murderer was. Yes, the case with Erasmus Shue had no itako spirit medium, nor were there any Buddhists. And it took place in West Virginia, not LA or Japan. And the victim's mother did not seem to intentionally channel the ghost. But what's important to note is that, like in Ace Attorney, yes, the ghost and their testimony can make its way into the legal system. So it seems pretty clear, Ace Attorney's spirit mediums are accurate, both to their inspirations and their usability in the court system, right? Well, maybe. I'll let Edgeworth explain.
The defense has claimed today that their spirit mediums are accurate. They believe that spirit mediums can indeed be used in court. Their defense has even brought up a precedent that they believe shows how and why spirit mediums can and should be used in court. But what the defense has not told you is even more telling. That is, The fatal flaw in any spirit medium's testimony. Hearsay. An out-of-court statement offered to assert the truth of the matter. Anything said out of court cannot be used in court. This is vital to the legal system. When someone testifies in court, they swear an oath to tell the truth. If someone says something out of court, no such oath was sworn. I cannot testify to the fact that someone told me they know who the murderer is, for I have no way of knowing how reliable that person's statement is. If you wish to call that person to court, so be it. Let them testify under oath. Let them testify after having sworn to tell the truth, but let them testify to that. For I cannot testify to what someone else told me outside of court. A spirit medium cannot testify to what a ghost told them. The spirit medium can only testify to what they personally did or saw. They cannot testify to what the ghost did or saw. There is no reason the mother of Elva Zona Hestershoe should have been able to testify as to what the ghost of her daughter told her. The defense attorney who cross-examined her on what her daughter told her should have been objected to with hearsay. The only reason the prosecution didn't object to hearsay is probably because the defense was being foolish. That testimony helped the prosecution's case.
So yeah, hearsay rules prevent secondhand testimony, or testimony made outside of court, from being used inside the courtroom. Now, you could argue that for Ace Attorney's spirit mediums, when a spirit medium is channeling a ghost, that ghost takes over the medium's body. Therefore, the ghost is testifying, not the medium. But that doesn't have any legal basis. But what if there was a way to legally get a spirit medium's testimony into court? Well, the prosecution has attempted to tell you that a medium's testimony is hearsay, but what the prosecution has not told you about is the numerous exceptions to hearsay. There are situations when hearsay is allowed, when what seems to be hearsay isn't actually hearsay. One such exception is vital to both the DL6 incident and the Greenbrier ghost. Hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered to assert the truth of the matter. So what if instead that statement was offered to assert something else? Instead of using the statement to show why the suspect is guilty, the statement can be used in another way. Out-of-court statements can be used when they show the effect on the listener. For example, a police officer can testify as to what somebody told them outside of court because the police officer is trying to show what effect that statement had on them. In the case of the Greenbrier ghost, it could be argued that the victim's mother's testimony was not hearsay because it was being used to show the effect it had on her. Because of what the ghost told her, she pushed for a post-mortem examination of the body. She is not testifying as to what the ghost told her because she is attempting to prove the defendant's guilt. She is testifying as to what the ghost told her because she is attempting to show why a post-mortem examination occurred. The attorney who cross-examined her admitted it himself, asking, "I have heard that you had some dream or vision which led to this post-mortem examination? This is what happens in the DL6 incident too. Misty Faye channels the victim tells her who he thinks the murderer is, and then the police investigate the suspect." This isn't showing whether or not the suspect is the culprit, it's just showing why the police began investigating the suspect. So actually, yes, in situations like these, out-of-court statements offered by ghosts can be used in court. So Ace Attorney's spirit mediums? They're accurate in representing both their inspirations, Buddhist and itako mediums, and they're accurate in actually being able to be used for legal purposes, with some loopholes, that is. So perhaps miraculously, Ace Attorney's spirit mediums are realistic. They could, in theory, be used in court, making Ace Attorney's spirit mediums perhaps the only accurate thing about the legal system in Ace Attorney. But hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Matpat, Stephanie, and the rest of Team Theorists.